So there it was, the 1970 Dodge Charger, not the sleek, roaring muscle car you might picture. No, this one looked more like an abandoned piece of metal someone had forgotten about. Covered in rust, with faded paint peeling off in sad, flaky patches. It had the kind of look that made you want to give it a hug. Or maybe just a good old kick in the tire to see if it would even roll. But to me, it was more than just a pile of parts. It was potential. Why did I choose this car? Well, it's complicated. The Charger has always been one of my dream cars, but this one, it wasn't a dream. It was a nightmare, wrapped in metal. And yet, something about it whispered to me, hey, I was once great. You can make me great again. Plus, I got it for a steal. You can't pass that up. Of course, when I first saw it, I had no idea what I was getting myself into. I think the car laughed at me when I tried to roll it off the trailer. It made a noise like an old man grumbling about having to get out of bed. But I was determined. I was going to turn this thing into a beast, or at the very least, a car. Let's talk about the process. People love to romanticize restoration. Oh, it's just a little elbow grease, a touch of paint, and a lot of TLC. Yeah, no. The first step was cleaning it, if you could even call it that. I spent hours scraping off decades of grime and rust. Every time I thought I'd gotten rid of a layer, there was another one beneath it, like the car had its own little layer cake of neglect. I half expected a family of raccoons to pop out of the glove compartment. Then came the parts. Oh, the parts. Replacing the floor pans was like trying to solve a jigsaw puzzle with pieces from different boxes. At one point, I thought I might end up using duct tape and wishful thinking, but then one magical day, I found the exact part I needed. Cue angelic choir. It was like the car gods were looking down, nodding in approval every time I bolted something new into place, whether it was a fresh engine block, some shiny new chrome, or a replacement for the completely useless transmission. I felt like a hero. You know that moment when a DIY project actually goes right? Like when you finally get that IKEA bookshelf built and there are no extra parts left? Yeah, imagine that, but with a car that weighs more than your self-doubt. I'd like to say there was some grand aha moment, but the reality was 1,000 little victories. Each part I installed felt like a small personal triumph. The welding was, let's say, not pretty. I spent more time than I care to admit trying to figure out how to make my welds look less like an abstract art project and more like something you'd trust with your life. But eventually, the Charger started to look, well, like a car again. But then there was the painting. Oh, the painting. The moment I sprayed that first coat of Dodge Hemi Orange, yes, I went full muscle car enthusiast, I knew we were heading into dangerous territory. I wasn't just painting a car. I was painting a piece of history. My heart was pounding faster than the air compressor. And when that orange hue started to cover the old, chipped body, it felt like magic. I was watching a monster wake up. And then came the first startup. You know, that moment when you turn the key and pray to whatever deity will listen that the engine doesn't explode in your face. I'll be honest, I had a small existential crisis. What if it didn't start? What if all this effort was for nothing? I turned the key. The engine sputtered. My stomach dropped. But then, roar. It came to life. I kid you not, I nearly hugged the steering wheel. The sound, oh, the sound was like a symphony. I stood there for a solid minute just listening to the engine rumble. I'm pretty sure I was smiling like a goofy teenager, but at that moment I didn't care. It felt like I'd just woken up an old friend who had been asleep for decades. This car, once a forgotten wreck, now had a heartbeat. And that's when I knew it was real. We were in this together. Now, let's talk about the first drive. It was everything and nothing all at once. That first time I took it out on the road, I was grinning like an idiot. The engine purred, the wheels hummed, and the world seemed to move just a little slower, like it was giving me a chance to appreciate the journey. But there was also a moment, right when I pushed the accelerator a little too hard and felt the power surge through the car, where I realized something. This wasn't just about restoring a car, it was about restoring myself. I'd spent months working on this thing, fighting through frustration, celebrating the small wins and persevering when things seemed hopeless. And here I was, cruising down the road, feeling every bump, every shift of the gears, knowing I had made this happen. The Charger wasn't just a car anymore, it was a part of me. Every dent, Every scratch, every curve was a reminder of how far we'd come together. And that's the thing about restoration, whether it's a car, a bike, or even a part of yourself. You're never just fixing something. You're uncovering potential. You're finding beauty in what was once forgotten. Sure, it's messy. Sure, it's frustrating. But when you finally take that first ride, it's all worth it. And let me tell you, nothing beats the feeling of turning that key and hearing your dream come to life. Except maybe the moment when you realize you didn't leave any tools inside the engine bay this time. Oh, and for the record, there's a lot of duct tape under that hood, but that's between me and the car.